Now this is my own bent on symbology. I think essentially that there are two kinds of symbols.
Can you tell us what page that is, just to keep up with it?
That'll be in the little blue book. In the little blue folder. Right on the front page. Just right here. Yeah, it's right in the front. First page in the front of the book. These right here.
No.
Visual aids. So, I think that there are symbols like this, and this is something that we'll talk about more in depth later. But in this symbol, which is an Antakarana, which is becoming very widespread and popular. This is not a Tibetan symbol, by the way, any stretch of the imagination, despite the fact that it's kind of pimped as that. This is a symbol that actually does radiate into space. I mean, you can measure this if you're into any kind of radiesthesia or have some kind of radionics gear like an SE5 or something like that. I mean, you can take a rate off this thing. It's got stuff pouring off of it. You try to do that with the Reiki symbol, and you're going to come up with much different picture. So here's the spiel I give about symbols. Primarily, I see them, well, there are multifaceted kinds, but primarily we're going to talk about two camps. Symbols that radiate into space, like this one, which we're going to touch on a little later, and the other symbols, like Reiki symbols. I primarily see Reiki symbols as essentially a symbolic language, as sort of the magical alphabet sort of that you're given to communicate with the intelligence of the Reiki current. Now, I don't care if you express that intelligence in angels or guides or the intelligence inherent in that current or whatever. Whatever your metaphor is, that's cool with me. This is the language that does that. This is also an assistance in focusing of intent. I mean, those of you who have been masters or second-degree practitioners for long enough, certainly know that you can toss them out the window and call the energy in by the way it feels after a while. Well, this is, the great focus of intent. Now, I use these symbols handed out because I feel that they're the most widely distributed, and because they do have a little extra sort of pool of energy built up around them. And it's that pool of intent on one aspect from a lot of healers tracing them out, intending. So that's the reason that I try to use the symbols that are the most widely disseminated, because they're all pretty pure. I mean, one of the great things about Reiki is that it does seem to be reasonably Tibetan in origin. And the great thing about Tibetan energies is that they're safe as heck. Tibetan energies are probably the only currents in the world that don't tie you into any kind of heavy group thing. Well, I mean, some levels of them do, but most of the outer stuff like this doesn't. Drasana, stuff like this. And what you're left with essentially, is this fantastic, and it's the reason that I'll drop into town and teach this, because you're not accruing a lot here. It has a protective energy built into it. It's part of the current. It protects the healer from the person's energy field that they're healing. Vice versa, it protects the person on the table from your personal energy field, and best of all, it protects the current of energy from both of them. One thing that you'll notice as you go through all of the stuff that's out there, and there's a lot of stuff out there, is that Choku Rei is the key to everything. All of these little alternative systems can't do jack shit without Choku Rei. It's the key empowering. People are using it to empower whole sets of additional symbols, which are becoming a whole set. I mean, I don't care if you're talking about the Omega Shakti system or whatever. I mean, these huge anthologies of 15 zillion level systems are being built up, and it's all being done with additional symbols empowered by the Choku Rei. So that's the reason why I disseminate this particular sheet of symbols. You're certainly free to continue using whatever ones that you do, but that's my spiel on why I do that. And you'll notice that differently. I mean, I have a friend, a person that I'm familiar with actually, in California who mailed out to a lot of Reiki masters and received something like 150 or something. Daikomi was back. They were completely different from each other. That's a lot of different symbols out there. So, I bear that in mind as well. Takata is said to have initiated, depending on who you listen to, with a lot of different ones. Certainly the Alliance seems to use one of 2 or 3 primary ones, and we meet people from there. Let's move on through the radiance technique into the valid Reiki system. Of course it's a valid Reiki system. I mean, it works really well. Consequently, it's, because of its price range, it's attracted, an entirely different class of Reiki people, so chances are you won't meet them. They're running different circles. Except for
I don't even for the first and second degree.
What through 2A or 2B or?
It's called a Reiki 1 and Reiki 2. It's 3. They divided up into 3A and B and started charging like $5,000 a piece.
There's a 2A and a 2B now.
Oh, is there?
And at 2A you get the symbol, and at 2B you get the name.
But it was $250 and $500.
Standard pricing. That's standard Alliance pricing too, for those of you that don't know that. That's $250 first degree, $500 second degree, and $10,000 third degrees.
Right. And stuff.
Okay.
No, I'm down.
Thank you.
Whom I didn't meet, but I know of because she taught at the school. I taught a class that summer before last. Who is a 9th degree Reiki master in the radiance technique and mortgaged her house for $20,000 so that she could become a 9th degree Reiki master. And I wouldn't mortgage. I don't even have a house. That's more than I make a year on my straight job. But by the same token, it's worth it to her. It's got to teach my students that it's worth it paying $20,000
Let's move off into a guy who has spawned a very large section of this community. His name is Arthur Robertson, Dr. Arthur Robertson, and he lives in Florida. Dr. Arthur Robertson learned Reiki from a lady named Iris Ishikuro, who was close to Takata, who was evidently one of the first people initiated, and who made him promise that he would never charge a lot of money for it. I mean, she had a big philosophical thing with that $10,000. So he never has. He was the first person that started to get it out there at a low price scale, and that low price scale was and is $1,000 in his organization. His organization is called the American Reiki Master Association. They have a number of publications out. This is an old one. It's out of print. It is by far the most telling, and it is called simply Reiki by Arthur Robertson. Now, I think what I'm going to do is skip ahead a little bit here, because this is intricate. Yes?
I had a question. You might be coming to this, but one thing I've been wondering, maybe like some of the other people in the room, I really didn't know about the Sai Baba and about the Tibetan, having been initiated in the Usui system. Mm-hmm. And my teachers were initiated by Arthur Robertson. And when I had spoken to somebody else not too long ago, they said that seemed really strange because he was very strong in the Tibetan symbols and the Tibetan aspect.
Arthur Robertson is a strict dogmatist for the Usui system. He's very strict in that. Okay, we can hit it now. He will be very quick to denounce you in his newsletter if you practice anything except the straight stuff that he practices, and does it. He's a very, very firm believer in that. He also, the other side of him, comes out of his research into radionics stuff with Rolf Jensen, who was an early radionics pioneer. Now, Rolf Jensen is alleged to have traveled to, and there's a picture of him here. Just hoping to show you. This is Irish Ishikuro, by the way. Obviously, an impact on his life to be page 1. Irish Ishikuro. Side B. I guess I've been talking for 45 minutes. And then, as you're going through this is allegedly a Xerox picture of Rolf Jensen in Japan studying Oriental type stuff. And he allegedly came across the Usui stuff and brought it home with him straight from the clinic. And he was a great collector of symbols, as a lot of radionics people are. There are different schools of bringing in thoughts. Some people are heavily into the numeric stuff, some people are more of the witness stuff. Well, he was a great collector of the symbol stuff. rumored to be, that's where that Antakarana thing comes from, we'll talk about shortly here, as well as a number of other things. Any Tibetan aspect attributed to Arthur Robertson probably comes from that Antakarana type thing and the additional research that he did. But in terms of the way he's into Reiki, he does have one slight bent off of the traditional stuff, and that is he has these things called master high frequency units, which are Antakaranas covered over in a sheet of slightly translucent material that are colored and charged, that he specially makes, that are a radically different energy essentially from the Antakarana as it's Xeroxed. Okay, so there is a validity here. I'm not in any way saying that it's not valid. It's whatever. But it's very valid. And he will make you sit on these high frequency units and essentially perform the attunement on these. And what it's supposed to do is essentially reverse your body's polarity, which he considers to be a very great thing. So that he considers that a Tibetan symbol. The Antakarana, of course, mentioned in theosophical stuff, and allegedly Tibetan, and all of that. So that may be where the Tibetan stuff comes from his lineage. But and he will use additional Sanskrit stuff, and he does have extra techniques, sort of willful healing techniques that he's combined with Reiki that are Tibetan. But in terms of the way he teaches and the way his energetic system is and his attunement processes and stuff, he's a real staunch dogmatist for traditional Usui stuff. So that was a good question.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump ahead here to a guy that Arthur Robertson doesn't have a lot good to say about, and that's William Rand. These are 3 materials from William that you're free to look through. This is his 3rd degree manual. This is his advanced master teacher manual, and this is his book on 1st and 2nd degree stuff. William Rand is essentially the founder of the Usui-Tibetan school. His attunement process is unlike nearly any other attunement process that I've ever seen, and I actually found Arthur Robertson because of legal difficulties that I was having with William Rand over reprinting his how's this for honesty? Over reprinting his master level materials. And Ruth and I are well versed on all of that. So I took a class with him in August of '94. No, August of '93 maybe. In Springfield, Illinois. It was a master teacher class. It might have been, I don't know. It's a ways back, at any rate. But and so those materials were from that class. And just assumed that it would be reasonably logical that you would then be allowed, go out and teach us things. That's essentially what his handout said. That was what was totally implied in the class and all of that. And so I did that exactly. I did a slow series of research projects over the course of time on the attunement procedures, and I very much slightly encouraged what I found about the attunement procedures and what we found clairvoyantly to be more effective and stuff like that. And then, I don't know, not long ago, maybe a few months ago, no, probably earlier this year, time flies, I got a letter in the mail saying, you shouldn't reprint, you should, not telling me not to reprint this procedure and that. And so I thought, well, that seems kind of silly. I mean, if it's a Reiki procedure and, I took the class to be able to go out and teach this, that's pretty ludicrous. And so it got me thinking about some of the other people that you mentioned. And the main person that he mentioned was Arthur Robertson. And so I thought, well, I wonder if I can find him. And I just taught a class in Chicago, which is where I picked up this out-of-print book. And in the back was, some old addresses and stuff for him. And so I went down to the library and just started looking through phone books, hoping that I'd run across something. And eventually I tracked him down. And so I said, in general introduction, I said, what can you tell me about this and that and the other thing? We had very interesting exchanges. He sent me a lot of literature, stuff like that. The interesting thing about this is that I was looking for evidence that, Rand was just passing on another attunement process that got from this.